Hi, my name is Kira Nilsson, and this is my presentation on language brokering and the effects it has on Latino families. A study that was done in 2011 by Rosalie Corona showed that in 2000, 20% of youth living in the United States had at least one foreign-born parent. It has been estimated that in 2020 there will be at least 30% of the youth living in the United States who have at least one foreign-born parent. This leads there to be a greater increase in the amount of children and adolescents that will need to become language brokers to help their family members. Some important information to know about language brokering is there are very few studies that have been done to show the effects that language brokering has on families as well as individuals. In 2011, there were 24 documents on language brokering, and only 50% of those had been published in peer-reviewed journals. This shows us that there is very little research that has been done to show the effects that language brokering has on parents as well as children. It is also important to look at who is language brokering for who. Some people who typically will be the language brokers are children and adolescents, and they will language broker for parents, other relatives such as aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins, friends, teachers, siblings, and strangers such as people who work in the grocery store. It could be healthcare providers, all different types of people. There are many different places where language brokering occurs. The two places that Latinos reported the need to language broker most frequently is at the doctor's office and also at schools. I currently work in a doctor's office and see this happen many times. I will see children who will come in and have to interpret for their parents, and it is quite surprising sometimes to realize that these kids can be a very young age, such as 5 or 6, and just barely learning English themselves and are having to interpret for their parents to understand what it is the doctor is saying. Um, some other places that is also used is in banks, stores, churches, and government offices. There are many different reasons why children and adolescents are having to language broker. Some of those could be notes or letters from school, medical forms or bills, credit card statements, bank statements, immigration forms, rental contracts, telephone, gas, electric bills, insurance forms, job applications, forms in a doctor's office, or instructions for a new appliance or piece of equipment. There are many different perspectives on language brokering. They can either be a positive or a negative perspective, and they vary from children to adults. Some of the positive aspects from children are they feel as if they are helping in their family. And according to the study done by Corona, she interviewed a girl and she said, I felt great because I could do something for my mom. I really liked helping her because it made me feel useful. So that's one important factor about language brokering for these children is that it makes them feel as if they are part of their family and as if they have an important purpose. Also, it helps them to reinforce and to become bilingual, and they feel that it is very important that they are able to learn two languages. It does also help these children to feel as if they are more grown up because they are often dealing with adult subjects in interpreting them between the parents, and it could be other family members or it could be the doctor. It also gives them a positive ethnic identity. It helps them to relate to their ethnicity as well as their culture. Many of these children also will have a higher self esteem and they also will have a higher academic performance in their overall education. There is also the perception of language brokering as a negative aspect of Latino cultures. The language brokering can be problematic for family relations and can also cause more family stress. It can also lead to frustration in the children as well as a poor adolescent adjustment. Oftentimes, children will feel as if they don't understand the information or they are interpreting the information incorrectly for their parents because they don't know what it is that they are being told. Children often can be uncomfortable in having to language broker, especially in situations such as the doctor's office, because they might not know the correct terminology or they're afraid that they will say something wrong, but they know that they cannot refuse and that they do have to go along and be a language broker. One other thing is often children will be worried that they might say something wrong, and one example of that is a 12-year-old girl said that she gets nervous because she feels like she doesn't understand what the doctor says because she gets confused by the words. And she goes on to say that she gets worried because what if she says something to the doctor or to her mother that is incorrect? And one example she gave is what if the doctor tells her that the baby cannot have medicine and she interprets that wrong and tells her mother that the baby can have medicine and in turn it would harm the baby. And so that is a great deal of stress to put on a child, and it causes many frustrations for them to worry about whether they are saying something that is right or wrong. There is also the parent's perception of language brokering, and that again can be a positive or negative perception. Oftentimes, parents will feel proud of their children, proud that they are able to take on that role and responsibility for the family to provide that interpretation for them. They also will feel pride in knowing that their child is able to learn two languages and to become bilingual. They feel that this is important because then that knowing the two languages will help these children later on in their lives to gain more success. They also feel that there's an importance in these children to become language brokers because they will learn the importance of familismo. They learn that it is important to help support and provide for the family and that the family is the main function. And by these children being able to interpret for these parents, they are providing a huge support to the family. On the other side, there is also a negative perception that parents have about their children being language brokers. It could be due to the fact that some parents might feel embarrassed or they will be feeling ashamed in having their children broker. Some parents also report feeling uncomfortable in the fact that they don't enjoy or want their children to hear some adult topics that they might have to discuss with doctors or with other people. They also feel as if they are not able to provide for their families or that there might be a decrease in the parenting effectiveness. One huge thing is they feel that there can be a role reversal with their child. This can be due to having the children have to interpret for the parents and the parents feeling as if they are not the ones providing for those families. They feel oftentimes that they are not creating the environment where they can be the parent, but yet they have to rely on their children, which also can lead them to become over dependent on their children. One story that was given in Corona's article talked about a woman who son was the interpreter for her because her daughter often had epileptic seizures. And there was one time that the woman called the police, she called the ambulance, she called 911, but she didn't know what to say, and she also didn't know what she was saying at the moment. And then she goes on to say that she realized at that time that she really needed her son and she really depended on him to help provide for her and her daughter as a means of safety for their family. There is also a different perception on language brokering depending on gender differences. Typically, parents and children don't necessarily differ on their views, but when it becomes the children, they do differ between boys and girls how they feel about language brokering. Girls typically will feel more positive about language brokering than boys. They feel that it gives them a bigger responsibility and more importance in their family. They also, with girls, feel that it gives them a higher ethnic identity and a feeling of belonging. It helps them to relate to their ethnicity, to where their parents immigrated from. It allows them to know more about their culture. Girls typically will be the language broker for the family, and it is also typically the oldest that will be the language broker, and they will even sometimes have to broker for their siblings that might be younger than them. When it comes to boys, boys typically will object more with language brokering, and it is often due to the fact that they feel uncomfortable. They might be uncomfortable in what the subject matter is. They might be uncomfortable in questioning what it is that they're saying, or they might just feel as if they don't know for sure what it is they are saying. In conclusion, I think that it is important to realize that there is a negative and a positive for children and parents in having them be language brokers. I believe that it is important for us to try and bridge the gap of the number of children that are acting as language brokers for their families and to find better opportunities for these parents to continue their education and to learn English for themselves. It also is important that we have interpreters available for families, whether it be at the doctor's office, at the bank, in church, at school, someone who is able to speak so that these children and adolescents don't have to be the ones communicating between the parents and these other people, and relieve some of that stress on these parents and these children as feeling as if they are the ones who have to take on this sole responsibility. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and that is the end of it. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and that is the end of it.